somewhere in the encrypted infrastructure of the Islamic Republic of Iran, in a secure digital environment that its operators pray no foreign intelligence service has penetrated, 88 of the most senior Shia clerics on earth are trying to elect the next supreme leader. They cannot meet in the same building. The last time they tried, Israeli bombs fell on the roof. They cannot use standard communications. Every phone line, every standard messaging platform, every conventional government channel is assumed to be compromised by at least 3 foreign intelligence services simultaneously. They cannot delay. The 10-day clock that the United States has placed on the succession process is running. The proxy network is fragmenting. The economy is collapsing under new sanctions pressure. And the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is standing over the shoulders of elected clerics, making phone calls and in-person visits that are described by sources inside the process as psychological warfare, demanding a specific outcome and making clear, without needing to say it explicitly, what the consequences of a different outcome might be. This is the most consequential and the most chaotic election in the history of the Islamic Republic of Iran. It is happening in secret, under military threat, with a sitting American president publicly announcing he will veto the frontrunner, and with an armed institution that controls 150,000 soldiers and 3,000 ballistic missiles trying to dictate the result. Let me take you inside what is actually happening. Not the official statements. Those have largely stopped. Not the diplomatic channels. Those are running in parallel universes of deniability. Inside the secure rooms, the encrypted calls, the corridors of the comm seminaries where men in black and white turbans are negotiating the future of a nation while checking over their shoulders for drone signatures. We have been building to this moment across 3 episodes. The Geneva standoff, where the diplomatic framework collapsed. The power vacuum, where the constitutional machinery began seizing. The battle for succession, where Washington and the IRGC began openly competing for the outcome. This is the episode where we go inside the room, or as close to inside as anyone outside the Islamic Republic can get on March 8th, 2026. The emergency session. Qom under siege. Qom is not a city that has historically needed to hide. For 1,400 years, it has been one of the most sacred sites in Shia Islam. The city where Fatima Masumeh, sister of the 8th Imam, is buried, where the great Hausa seminaries have trained generations of clerics, where religious authority in the Shia world has been debated, refined, and proclaimed. It has never been the target of foreign military action. Until now. The Qom strike, what happened and what it means. On March 3rd, the Assembly of Experts convened in Qom for what was intended to be the formal vote count session, the meeting that would produce a confirmed supreme leader or a confirmed deadlock requiring further deliberation. The location had been moved from Tehran after the bombing of the National Assembly building. The clerics believed that Qom's status as a sacred city, a site of profound religious significance to Shia Muslims across the world, would provide a degree of protection that Tehran no longer could. They were wrong. Israeli airstrikes targeted the Assembly's meeting hall in Qom during the session. The clerics were forced to suspend proceedings and move into emergency bunker positions beneath the seminary complex. No confirmed casualties among Assembly members have been publicly reported, but the psychological impact on men who have spent their careers in theological debate rather than military bunkers cannot be overstated. The strike represents a fundamental rewriting of the rules of engagement in the Iranian succession crisis. Israel has now twice struck buildings where the constitutional succession process was being conducted. The message is as unambiguous as a message can be without being spoken. The process you are conducting is a legitimate military target. The outcome you are reaching toward will determine whether Israel considers the resulting Islamic Republic a threat that must be eliminated preemptively, or a state that can be managed. For the clerics of the Assembly, this is not an abstract strategic consideration. It is existential in the most immediate physical sense. They are being asked to make the most consequential political decision of their lives, the selection of the leader of the Islamic Republic, while simultaneously being targets of a foreign military campaign. The cognitive pressure of that combination is designed to produce a specific effect: paralysis, compromise, or capitulation to whichever outcome reduces the military threat most rapidly. The decentralized process. How a sacred election went digital. The Assembly of Experts has operated for 47 years through a physical process rooted in the formalism of clerical tradition. Members convene in a formal chamber, deliberations follow established protocols, votes are conducted in person with the theological gravity appropriate to the selection of the highest religious political authority in the Shia world. None of that is possible right now. For the first time in the history of the Islamic Republic, portions of the Supreme Leader succession vote have been conducted through encrypted online platforms. The specific technology is not publicly confirmed, but regional intelligence sources describe a system involving multiple layers of encryption, biometric verification to confirm the identity of participating clerics, and a distributed vote counting mechanism designed to prevent any single point of compromise from invalidating the entire process. The theological implications of a digitally conducted supreme leader selection are not trivial in the Islamic Republic's institutional framework. The formality of the physical process is not merely procedural, it is part of the legitimacy structure of the selection itself. When a new supreme leader is announced, the announcement derives its authority in part from the demonstrably proper execution of the selection process. A partially digital vote, conducted under military duress, from dispersed secure locations, with at least 8 members absent in boycott, is not a process that carries unambiguous constitutional legitimacy by the Islamic Republic's own standards. The IRGC understands this legitimacy deficit. It is part of why the announcement of Mujtaba Khamenei, which multiple intelligence sources suggest has already occurred in a secret session, has not been made public. The Guard is waiting for conditions under which the announcement will carry sufficient legitimacy to be sustainable. Whether those conditions can be created in the current environment is the central question of the next 10 days. The dispersal. Where the clerics are now. The Assembly of Experts is currently not meeting as a body in any single physical location. Its 88 members, minus the 8 who have formally boycotted, and the additional members who have withdrawn from active participation under various pretexts, are distributed across multiple secure facilities in and around Qom. The largest concentration is in facilities adjacent to and beneath the shrine of Fatima Masumeh itself. This location provides the maximum psychological and symbolic protection available. An Israeli strike on the Masumeh shrine would be one of the most inflammatory acts in the history of Shia Islam, generating a reaction from Shia communities across the world that even the most hawkish Israeli strategist would struggle to justify. The shrine complex is, in effect, the safest piece of real estate in the Islamic Republic right now. Other members are meeting in private seminary facilities whose locations have been classified and are rotated regularly to prevent surveillance from establishing predictable patterns. A small number of members, those whose age or health makes movement difficult, are participating through the encrypted digital link from secured private residences. The physical fragmentation of the assembly mirrors its political fragmentation. A body that is supposed to deliberate, debate, and reach consensus through the face-to-face engagement of theological peers is doing none of those things. It is conducting a political negotiation through intermediaries, under duress, toward an outcome that at least one significant faction regards as constitutionally illegitimate. This is not a supreme leader selection. It is a hostage negotiation in which the hostage is the Islamic Republic's institutional legitimacy. The IRGC coup, psychological warfare inside the sacred chamber. What is happening inside the Assembly of Experts right now is not a theological deliberation. It is an institutional siege. The IRGC has crossed a line that, even by the standards of its long history of political interference within the Islamic Republic, represents a qualitative escalation. It is no longer simply expressing preferences or leveraging relationships. It is conducting what multiple sources with knowledge of the process describe as systematic psychological warfare against the individual members of the body constitutionally responsible for selecting the supreme leader. The pressure campaign, what is actually happening. The IRGC pressure campaign operates on multiple levels simultaneously, and understanding each level is essential to understanding why 8 assembly members have formally boycotted and why the remaining members are voting in an environment of profound institutional coercion. Level 1 is the direct communication. IRGC commanders, specifically from the intelligence organization, the IRGC's internal intelligence arm that operates parallel to the civilian Ministry of Intelligence, have been making direct phone calls to assembly members. The calls are not threatening in explicit terms. They are framed as expressions of concern. The security situation is critical. The axis of resistance is fragmenting. Only a leader with deep security ties can prevent collapse. The clerics have a patriotic responsibility to support the candidate best positioned to protect the Islamic Republic in its most dangerous hour. The subtext of these calls is understood by every cleric who receives one. The IRGC intelligence organization knows where every assembly member lives. It knows their families, their finances, their political histories, their theological positions. The fact that it is calling is itself a demonstration of that knowledge. Level 2 is the in-person visit. IRGC officers have been conducting personal visits to assembly members at their Qom residences and at their secured meeting locations. These visits serve a dual purpose: to deliver the message of institutional support for Mujtaba and to ensure that the clerics understand they are being watched. An IRGC officer at your door, in the context of the current crisis, is not a social call. It is surveillance wearing the mask of conversation. Level 3 is the structural pressure. The IRGC controls the physical security of every location where assembly members are currently staying. It controls the vehicles that transport clerics between secure locations. It controls the communications infrastructure through which the encrypted assembly sessions are conducted. A cleric who wants to vote differently from the IRGC's preference must do so in full knowledge that the people providing his physical protection are the people whose preferred candidate he is rejecting. The boycott. 8 clerics who said no. The 8 assembly members who have formally boycotted the current sessions represent something more significant than a procedural protest. They are the institutional conscience of the Islamic Republic, asserting itself against the IRGC at the moment of maximum pressure. Their stated objection is theologically precise and constitutionally devastating. The push for Mojtaba Khamenei constitutes hereditary rule, vilayat-e-intisabi as opposed to vilayat-e-intikabi, inherited guardianship as opposed to elected guardianship. In the theological framework of vilayat-e-faqih, as articulated by Khomeini himself, the supreme leader derives his authority from the clerical establishment's assessment of his qualifications, not from his bloodline, not from his family name, not from his father's position. A son succeeding his father as supreme leader is not merely procedurally irregular. In the Islamic Republic's founding theology, it is a category error, a confusion of monarchical succession with theocratic selection that the 1979 revolution was explicitly designed to eliminate. The Shah's dynasty was replaced precisely because Iranians rejected the principle that political authority flows through bloodline. The 8 boycotting clerics are saying, if we install Mojtaba, we become what we overthrew. This argument has not been effectively refuted by the IRGC or by Mojtaba's supporters within the assembly. It has been ignored, dismissed, and suppressed, which is itself evidence of its power. Arguments that can be answered are answered. Arguments that cannot be answered are silenced. The 8 boycotters are not powerful enough to prevent the succession. They are 8 of 88, a minority, even if their number grows with additional quiet withdrawals from active participation. But they have done something that cannot be undone. They have placed on the public record, within the constitutional process itself, the theological objection to a Mojtaba succession. That record will outlast the current crisis. It will be available to every future cleric who needs a doctrinal foundation for challenging the legitimacy of a Khamenei II-led Islamic Republic. The secret vote. What we know. The most significant and most contested piece of information in the current succession crisis is the claim, consistent across multiple intelligence sourcing channels, that a secret vote has already been conducted and that Mojtaba Khamenei has already been selected as supreme leader in that vote. If this is accurate, the Islamic Republic is currently in a state of deliberate public deception. A new supreme leader has been chosen, the constitutional process has reached its conclusion, but the announcement is being withheld for strategic reasons. The reasons, cited by sources with knowledge of the internal deliberations, are multiple and reinforcing. First, the 40-day mourning period. In Shia tradition, 40 days of mourning follow the death of a significant religious or political figure. The announcement of a new supreme leader before the conclusion of this mourning period would be perceived by many in the devout Shia community as indecently hasty, a sign that the succession was driven by political expediency rather than theological appropriateness. The 40-day period from Khamenei's death extends into early April 2026. Second, the military situation. Announcing a supreme leader whose first act would be to inherit a regional military crisis, with the IRGC's proxy network fragmenting, Israeli military action ongoing in multiple theaters, and American carrier groups in active enforcement posture, creates a governing crisis from day one. A delayed announcement allows the new supreme leader to emerge into a slightly less acute environment, or at least allows his backers to claim that the announcement was timed for maximum stability rather than maximum institutional weakness. Third, and most consequentially, the American veto. Announcing Mojtaba in the current environment, with Trump publicly calling him unacceptable and signaling a shift from deterrence to active regime replacement, would transform the announcement from a constitutional formality into a direct challenge to the United States. The IRGC wants to announce from a position of institutional consolidation, not from a position of maximum external vulnerability. The delay is itself a strategic decision. But delays in revolutionary states during succession crises have a historical tendency to create the conditions they are designed to avoid. The 10-day clock, Washington's ultimatum and the point of no return. The 10-day clock is not a formal diplomatic ultimatum. There is no signed document, no State Department cable with a specific deadline, no UN Security Council resolution. It is something more dangerous, a communicated expectation, transmitted through a combination of public statements, back-channel signals, and the visible repositioning of military assets, that the window for a diplomatic resolution of the succession crisis is finite. And closing. What the U.S. has signaled, the Trump administration's escalation of language in the past 72 hours has been systematic and deliberate. The progression from the initial Axios interview, where Trump called Mojtaba a lightweight and demanded involvement in the appointment, to the current posture represents a significant ratcheting of pressure. The administration has now explicitly indicated through both public statements and what senior officials describe as clear private communications to Iranian interlocutors that a confirmed Mojtaba succession will trigger a shift in the posture of U.S. military assets in the region. Specifically, the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group and supporting assets will move from what the Pentagon currently characterizes as deterrence posture, maintaining presence to signal capability and resolve, to what administration officials are calling active regime replacement operations. What does active regime replacement look like operationally? The honest answer is that this specific phrase has not been precisely defined in public statements, and that ambiguity is intentional. The threat is designed to work through the imagination of Iranian decision-makers rather than through a specific enumerated action set. But, based on this Venezuela model precedent and the administration's public framework, the operational elements likely include maximum economic pressure escalation targeting the remaining financial flows that sustain the IRGC's operational capacity, covert support for internal opposition elements within Iran, including potential support for the protest movements that would likely emerge following a Mojtaba announcement, and the active interdiction of Iranian oil exports through enforcement of existing sanctions at a level that goes beyond the current status quo. The military dimension, the carrier group, is the visible fist behind the policy. Its repositioning signals seriousness in a language that every regime that has ever faced American military pressure understands immediately. The tension between the 10-day clock and the 40-day mourning period encapsulates the impossible bind the Islamic Republic currently occupies. The theology says, wait, 40 days. The geopolitics says act within 10. The IRGC wants to announce now. The clerical establishment wants to announce properly. Washington wants a different candidate than the IRGC. Israel is bombing the venue. These constraints do not resolve. They collide. The Arafi option, the sacrifice candidate. Inside the moderate faction of the Assembly of Experts, a specific framing has emerged for the Alireza Arafi candidacy that is revealing in its cynicism. He is being described, privately, as a sacrifice candidate. The term sacrifice candidate is not being used to mean a candidate who will lose. It is being used to mean a candidate who is offered to the external pressure, to Washington, to the international community, to the Iranian public's preference for a non-dynastic succession, as a demonstration that the Islamic Republic is capable of producing a legitimate, theologically qualified supreme leader without IRGC imposition. Arafi checks the boxes that Mojtaba does not. He is a genuine senior cleric with credible theological credentials. He holds the Ayatollah rank. He has stood in calm seminaries, taught students, issued religious rulings, and built the kind of scholarly reputation that the Velayat-e-Faqih doctrine requires. He is not his father. He has not been selected by the IRGC as its preferred institutional tool. His selection would be defensible on constitutional grounds in a way that Mojtaba's selection, particularly given the IRGC pressure campaign, is not. The question is whether Arafi is a real candidate or a diplomatic fig leaf. The moderate faction's private description of him as a sacrifice candidate suggests they do not believe he can actually govern, that they are offering him as a way to de-escalate external pressure, while the real power dynamics of the Islamic Republic continue to be worked out behind whatever institutional facade a new supreme leader provides. From Washington's perspective, an Arafi succession does not deliver the Venezuela model's stated goals: nuclear dismantlement, proxy network collapse, IRGC reorientation. But it delivers something the Trump administration has said it will accept as a minimum: a non-dynastic leader, a constitutional process, a figure with whom some form of negotiation is conceivable. The gap between those four characterizations is the gap that the Islamic Republic must navigate in the next 10 days. It has never been wider. It has never mattered more. The three scenarios and the point of no return. We are at the convergence point. 4 episodes, 4 weeks of accelerating crisis, and we have arrived at the moment where the variables stop multiplying and begin resolving, one way or another. Let me give you the 3 scenarios that are actually possible from where we stand on March 8th, not the desired outcomes, the realistic scenarios, then 3 watch points that will tell you, within 24 to 48 hours of each decision node, which scenario is unfolding. The 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, the compromise, the Assembly of Experts, under the combined pressure of Israeli military action, American ultimatum, 8-member boycott, and the genuine clerical opposition to hereditary succession, produces a compromise candidate. Most likely Arafi, potentially Larijani, if the IRGC can be persuaded that his security credentials are sufficient guarantee against a reformist restructuring of the Guard. The IRGC accepts the outcome. Not happily, not completely, but with the calculation that a Arafi or Larijani-led Islamic Republic is survivable and that a confrontation with Washington right now, on the terms currently on the table, is not. The announcement is made with appropriate ceremony. The 10-day clock stops. The USS Gerald R. Ford does not move. Oil markets stabilize. The proxy network remains fractured but no longer in active collapse. The Islamic Republic survives, diminished but intact. Scenario 2. The IRGC imposition. The Guard forces the Mojtaba announcement publicly before the 40-day mourning period concludes in defiance of American pressure. The announcement is made from a secure location, with IRGC commanders visibly present, with the 8 boycotters absent and their absence noted but not addressed. Washington responds immediately. New sanctions, carrier group repositioning, covert support for opposition elements. Israel conducts additional strikes. The proxy network, Hezbollah, Houthis, PMF, interprets the announcement as authorization to escalate with or without coordination from the new Supreme Leader's office. The Middle East enters what U.S. defense planners call a pre-kinetic phase. The question is no longer whether conflict occurs, but when and how. Scenario 3, the deadlock. The Assembly cannot reach consensus. The IRGC cannot force a majority. The compromise faction cannot deliver their candidate. The Provisional Leadership Council continues indefinitely in a constitutional limbo that the Islamic Republic's framework was never designed to sustain. The longer the vacuum persists, the more each constituent element of the Iranian state begins making independent decisions. The IRGC conducts its own foreign policy, the president his own diplomacy, the clerical establishment its own religious governance. Iran does not collapse. It fragments, slowly, then suddenly, into competing power centers whose coordination becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. This is the scenario that is, paradoxically, both the least dramatic and the most dangerous, because a fragmented Iran is an Iran whose most extreme elements operate without the restraining influence of a functional central authority. In that environment, the risk of catastrophic miscalculation by a mid-level IRGC commander, a Hezbollah field officer, or a Houthi drone operator becomes the central strategic risk for the entire region. The Islamic Republic of Iran is a 47-year-old revolutionary state that has survived a catastrophic 8-year war, multiple assassination campaigns against its leadership, 4 decades of crippling economic sanctions, 3 major domestic protest cycles, and the sustained military pressure of the most powerful intelligence and military alliance in human history. It has survived all of that because, at every moment of crisis, it found a mechanism for producing institutional cohesion, a supreme leader who could hold the competing factions together, a revolutionary framework that gave enough people enough reasons to defend the system, even when they disagreed with its specific decisions. That mechanism is currently broken. The supreme leader is gone. The clerics who are supposed to choose a replacement are meeting in bunkers, voting on encrypted apps, and receiving phone calls from men with guns. The constitutional process has been physically struck twice by foreign military forces. The sitting American president has publicly announced he will not recognize the frontrunner. And the frontrunner himself is the product of a process that 8 of the body's own members have called a betrayal of the revolution's founding values. The question the next 10 days will answer is whether 47 years of institutional inertia is enough to survive the simultaneous failure of every mechanism the Islamic Republic has ever used to manage its own internal contradictions. No one in Tehran knows the answer. No one in Washington knows the answer. No one in the bunkers beneath the Masuma Shrine knows the answer. The secret sessions continue. The clock runs. And the most dangerous 10 days in the modern history of the Middle East have just begun. We will be here for every hour of them.